Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And today I have a true expert on a very important part of dealing with the divorce process. So McGuire is the founder of Health Care Pathfinder LLC, a health and long-term care advice, advocacy, and management firm. And Anne really specializes in helping people determine what are the best products, what are the best options, and what do people need to consider about both their healthcare and their long-term care needs. So, Anne, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mardi, for having me here.
Well, it's wonderful because this is an area, we were just speaking before we caught on this call, this is an area where people really don't know what they don't know, and that's when it becomes a problem for them. So, Anne, how did you get into this specialized focus?
Well, I was just going to expand on, because we help people, find their insurance products, but we do a lot more as far as really in-depth support related to their health and long-term care insurance and care needs. So, and I say that because my background is nursing. So and healthcare. So I started really, and I go back to my 14 years old when I started riding the ambulance in my town as a volunteer, and then became an EMT, at 16, which was nationally, we were the only organization that was able to get certified at 16 years old. It's 18, but now they changed the way things are done, which is nice. And then I went to nursing school, and ended up working surgical trauma intensive care. Did not like the hospital arena, so I went into home care, which I absolutely loved. And this is sort of the beginning of managed care kind of started kicking in, and we were limited on the amount of visits that we were able to make to visit our patients. And it started understanding the impact that insurance was going to start to have on the care that we were providing. Then I moved again, moved up to Massachusetts, and ended up saying, I think I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to work for an insurance company and help clients or patients from the other side. So it was a really great experience. I worked with 3 large medical groups, and I helped them manage the care of their patients with that insurance, sort of window that was really kind of managing some of it. And it was a really great experience. And that was learning the insurance benefits, understanding how the insurance companies worked. And then it was a managed Medicare product, that actually a managed Medicare Advantage plan that people probably hear of if they're sort of in the 65 plus arena. And again, deeper dive into management, and was very focused on the physicians making the money or losing money related to the care.
Right.
And then moved again. And that's when I started working for a similar startup, which is similar to my business, which is that healthcare advice, advocacy, and management. So at that time, we were really involved in claims management and helping people get covered by insurance, because there was pre-existing condition exclusions. So people, lived all different states. We would tell them if they lived in Arizona, they might have to move to another state where they didn't have that pre-existing condition exclusion, or they had a state insurance program. So, yeah.
I can only imagine how invaluable that is for your clients, that you've been on really 3 different sides of how this works. As somebody from Canada who moved down here to the States, like, I was shocked because we're just used to going to the doctor or going to the hospital or having the procedure. And, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a wait, but, there was never a chance where there was going to be, no, you can't have this procedure because your insurance doesn't cover it. So,
Right.
so where do you, let's talk specifically about what are some of the considerations that people need to, let's say you're going through a divorce and all of a sudden you're looking at getting new insurance, or maybe coming off of your spouse's insurance and looking at what do I need if I'm 40, 50, 60 or older or younger. There's a whole range of different things to consider.
Exactly. And, it really is different based on where you are in that stage of whether you're pre-divorce or, actually the divorce has gone through and your options to, okay, maybe you went on COBRA, which we can talk more about, and that's ending. So, just even going back to thinking about if you haven't gone through the divorce and you're here sort of thinking about it and want to start planning, is thinking about what that is going to happen. What type of coverage does your spouse have? Is it this wonderful group company benefits that haven't cost anything, meaning premium wise and low deductibles? Or is it that your spouse is self-insured and on this, they have a small business, or turning 65 and you're 50? So there's all different, there's so many things to think about, and that's very important to be talking to your advisors when you're going through the divorce, to be knowing what's going to happen on the other side so that you can be asking the questions or asking for the income, to support those costs. And that's where also long-term care could come in, as well as thinking about those types of benefits. And I can talk more about that down the road in this conversation. And then there's the next phase of, okay, you know what the plan is, that you're going to go on COBRA, COBRA is the company benefits. You would switch over to no longer on the group plan. You would get this individual COBRA benefit that you would be eligible to keep for 3 years, for 36 months, where you may be responsible for the premium yourself, or maybe you can negotiate that. Your spouse pays it. So there's many different options in that case. So that's a nice, comfortable transition. And the other option, if you didn't go on COBRA, would be usually an individual plan, which is in the marketplace for your state plan. Or maybe you'd be eligible for a private type of insurance, or you have your own business, and maybe or you're a sole proprietor, or you have a couple employees. So really looking at so many different options. And then the third scenario is you did go on COBRA, COBRA's ending, and now what? And so that's, again, looking at the marketplace. And when you're looking at the marketplace, the state you live in has a major, really impact on your options and the type of plans that are available. So, there's a lot of changes going on in the Medicare space with coverage for 2025. This year, as always, premiums are going up in the individual market. So it's very important to be looking at options, even if you have, depending on where you're at, even if you're on COBRA, you're healthy and you're finding that the benefits are not what you need, you should maybe be looking this time of, which is open enrollment. I'm not sure when this will be shared, this video, but the open enrollment for people who are turning 60 or people who are on Medicare is October 15th through December 7th. For people who have individual insurance, their open enrollment opportunity to change coverage starts November 1st. And depending on the state, will go through the end of December, or it will go into January 15th.
Yeah. So there are, there are so many things to consider. This is not a 5-minute phone call with, somebody that runs an insurance office that's selling a product. And that's one thing that I wanted to clarify. You all don't specifically sell insurance products. You just help people determine what are the best products for them given their situation, right?
Right. We're licensed in life and health. So we have all of the training and have been in the sales side, and which is so nice to not be on that side, because it's really about the experience. So people often, and even when you talk to the state marketplace insurance representatives, they're very helpful, but they're thinking about cost of premium. They're often not thinking about the whole experience. Like what do you want to experience? Do you have illnesses or medications? Do you have, where do you live? What's your network look like? Really looking at all of it so that you can figure out what's going to be comfortable for you. What can you afford?
Right.
And what's your experience going to be? And, that's it's, if you are coming off those COBRA type of company benefits, your networks are usually not national when you're going to the state. So you may have a very limited, when I say network, that could be doctors, all healthcare professionals, physical therapists, all these different providers where you have to have your MRI. And also, if you end up needing to have, say, knee surgery or hip surgery, and you need to go to a skilled rehab after, or, maybe you have a horrible accident, you need to know who's going to be in network for those providers if something happens.
Yes. And I've got to say, especially I'm going to just say this, I live in a small rural area in Texas, and some of the facilities are, not that ideal. They're not places that you would, they're small communities. They don't have maybe the latest in technology, and they're older facilities. And some people in this area, they're really limited in where they can go. And you may be, for lack of a better word, stuck in one of these facilities because they're just, you'd have to go out of network, and then the costs are so prohibitive for most people.
Right. And what is important also to know, and this is my, being aware of, not maybe right now, but down the road, if you move to another state, maybe it's an opportunity, think about what the insurance is going to be like in that other state, what your options are going to be. If, the other situations, if you have your own, group coverage, you may change options every year when the insurance renews. So often you're just happy you have the coverage, right?
Right.
You just get the renewal. But when you're thinking about, high deductible plan, which is where you pay out of pocket first, and then the insurance company starts paying. I have with several clients who, they're healthy. So you say, well, go with this higher deductible. But then when something happens and they're paying $3,000 out of pocket, they're like, but wait,
Yeah.
I thought this was covered. And you say, well, it is. It was a negotiated price. If you didn't have that insurance coverage, you may be paying $5,000 or $6,000 for that MRI. So it's really understanding the coverage. And if you don't want to understand, they say who, not how, is find someone who really knows it and understands it and can explain it to you or help you manage it so that you don't have to figure out how to do it.
Right. And I think that's where having, especially somebody that has no skin in the game, not trying to sell you a product. That is where that is just golden, because you're really getting honest feedback with no agenda behind it. And I'm guessing that a lot of people they take a look at it. I've reviewed every year, because I'm on Marketplace. Every year I review it. And by about the fourth option, I'm just like, I don't even, just pick one. I don't care. Who goes through all 20 of them and actually reviews them?
Right. And I didn't even really mention the side of the people who do have, say, some significant medical issues or needs that do they have, are the doctors not in network? And if not, do you have out of network benefits in that you could file the claims? So again, that's going into the individual marketplace, and that's, people will say, oh, okay, I'm going to go get this. I have doctors who don't accept insurance. I'm going to get this out of network coverage. But in some of these plans, you have to really look at it because you may have a $30,000 deductible before it starts paying. And understanding all of that, and people are like, oh, well, I have a $10,000, out of network benefit, and I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit, but they don't realize that it's out of network, so that they're only paying based on the contracted rate, what they would pay to one of their in-network providers. So they may pay, you have a $200 bill, they're going to only be looking at $100 of what they approve. So you're still paying that extra $100. So it's really, network is very important. And then you get into negotiating and all of that with, costs and talking to providers.
Right. Right.
World.
Yeah. And so thank you. I think this is really important, but can we pivot a little bit to the long-term care? Because I know that's, I've heard a lot of different people speak on this at conferences, and it can be extremely cost prohibitive, but not having it can be devastating for people's legacy, their families. Can you talk a little bit about how to decide whether that's something you need to add on to your your healthcare coverage or not, Anne?
Right. Well, it's always really think about it and ask questions. And I always say, if you've got a financial advisor or planner, talk to them to look at your finances to help you determine whether or not, you really need to get this coverage, and can you afford it, and what types. There's different types of long-term care insurance. You can get the straight, you pay just like your homeowners or auto insurance. You pay for the insurance, you pay a premium every year, you know what the benefit is, and it's use it or lose it. And then there's other types of plans that are sort of they have a life insurance benefit involved, so that if you don't use it, it'll go to the life side, or you'll have a rider on it that will be the long-term care sort of rider on the life insurance policy. So it protects you a little bit. But we have so many clients that right now are using their long-term care insurance benefits that they bought. Some of them bought, 20, 30 years ago, and they have unlimited benefits. It's crazy. The insurance companies are crying, or trying to avoid paying these claims. But you have to think about this. They're paying, some of these people are $20,000 a month for care.
Right.
So when people start, and I've got some clients who are paying, $10,000 to $17,000 a year for the premium. But when you think about that, private care, whatever the long-term care costs are going to be, these people are getting reimbursed about $20,000 a month, some of them. So it's really, it's a very individual decision, but especially for whichever, whether you're the male or female, often, I know many women want that long-term care insurance policy, whether they're divorced or married, because they're not expecting or that someone else is going to be taking care of them. Right. So that for protection, and they don't want their children to feel the burden, that they want to be able to afford to have someone come in and care for them, or to live in an assisted living community, long-term, whatever, just to make sure that you've got choices as well. Because the other side of it this is something that be part of your expenses.
Right.
If you build it in, then you can plan it. But there's the people who make these decisions to stop paying down the road. And it's just one of those painful things for us to see when
Yeah.
someone decided to stop paying. And usually it's the adult children calling us and saying, Mom or Dad decided that it was getting too expensive. And so now everyone, they're paying for their parents' care because they've gone through their funds.
Right. And my understanding, and I could be wrong, so please correct me, but it used to be that those long-term care policies were pretty affordable. And they still are, from my understanding, if you're relatively young when you're applying. But if
Right.
you're already like 55, 65, and now you're applying, they can be kind of cost prohibitive to even consider. Is that accurate, or?
I would go a little older, to be honest with you. A lot of people are buying it in their 50s. That's a really ideal time to buy it. But beyond that, it does get more expensive. But when you're talking about, first of all, you have to qualify.
Right.
So that's why another good reason to be thinking about buying it earlier is if you're healthy, your premiums are going to be less.
Right.
Based on your health history.
Right.
For example, when I bought my policy, I was 5 years after having breast cancer. So they didn't even look at that. So again, that's important to consider. But as far as, the different options with the life component, with the hybrid side, those are a little bit less expensive, if you will.
Right.
But they also, depending on your income, you could be paying a 10 pay where you just pay it all out in 10 years and you're done.
Right.
They're big numbers, but again, it really depends on what works for you.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, when you're talking about and Medicare, Medicaid doesn't cover a lot of this stuff. Like people assume that, oh, I can, go into a nursing home. Well, no, there's only so many days in a nursing home that it covers, and then that's it. It's gone.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's really great is even with some of these policies, depending on what state you live in, those can be protected in that they can be in a trust, or if they're a state partnership, they don't look at that long-term care policy as your income. So if it comes to qualifying for Medicaid and getting support, they can separate that out. So it's the other thing that's important also is, as a couple, even before you get divorced, you can get that discounts on buying a policy or policies, and it's a couple discount. And so often people, before they actually go through the divorce, will buy the long-term care insurance policy before, so that they get that. I mean, it can be up to 20% discount.
Well, that is really positive. That's great news.
Right.
I wasn't aware that was a possibility even. And we have covered a ton of information, and I know there is a ton more on this topic because and it's something that's so important. The older you get, the more important it is. I in my mind anyhow. What do you think of everything you've talked about is the most important thing you want people to remember?
Well, I kind of have, three things that I say to people is just even, and this isn't even related to divorce necessarily. It's just be aware, review your insurance, be aware that when you can change your insurance and that you may have options. And there's all different scenarios where, depending on if you're 65 and older, as to when you can change your insurance. So definitely that. Also, have your legal documents. And I know you're working with a lot of attorneys. Make sure you have the legal documents and authorizations. Figure out who's going to be your advocate if something does happen. Because we do a lot of advocacy side when people are going through significant life-changing events. And that's one of the most important things, that is for us to be able to either be the advocate for our clients, or to work with the advocate, the adult children. It's not just about who your POA as the power of attorney. It's really about who's going to be able to be there
Yeah.
for you when something happens.
Wonderful. Thank you for that information. And Anne, I know you provided a resource guide that I'm going to make sure the link for that is in the show notes. So I'm going to encourage you to go and grab that and take a look at it. It's got some great information. And if people want to find out more about what you do or consult with you about considering their healthcare or long-term care needs, what's the best way to reach out?
The easiest way is probably just to go to our website, which is www.healthcarepathfinder.com, and you can connect with us through the website. So that's probably the easiest way for people to do it.
Thank you. And I will make sure that's in the show notes as well. And thank you so much for sharing all your expertise and knowledge on this really important topic.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you for listening in to the D Shift. And don't forget to tune in again for our next episode. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.